I don't need a record company anymore for obvious reasons. I mean, it's because of the new electronic availability. I mean, there's no necessity for a record company.
Merle Haggard, the legendary country music icon, passed away 9 years ago on April 6, 2016, leaving behind a legacy of timeless music and a life filled with both struggles and triumphs. Since his death, fans have speculated about various aspects of his personal life, particularly his long battle with illness and the reflections he shared during his final years. Now, Haggard's wife, Theresa Ann Lane, has confirmed some long-standing rumors and speculations, providing insight into the man behind the music. Haggard, known for his outlaw persona and for being a voice for working-class Americans, was open about his troubled past, including his time spent in prison and his struggles with addiction. A poignant confirmation from Theresa is Haggard's awareness of his mortality. It was well known that he had been battling pneumonia for several years, and in the months leading up to his death, he reportedly told his family that he knew he would not make it past his birthday. In a haunting twist, Haggard passed away on his 79th birthday, just as he had predicted. One of the major rumors that surrounded his life was his deep sense of regret and reflection in his later years. What was the truth behind the rumors? How did this revelation impact her life and the legacy of her late husband? Let's dive into the details and explore the untold story of Merle Haggard. Life before fame. Merle Haggard's early life was shaped by the hardships faced by his parents, Flossie Ma and James Francis Haggard, who were part of the wave of Dust Bowl migrants seeking better opportunities in California during the Great Depression. Originally from Chakota, Oklahoma, the Haggard family's move to California was spurred by a devastating event: the burning down of their barn in 1934. This loss, coupled with the broader economic despair of the time, prompted the family to leave behind their Oklahoma roots and head west, joining thousands of other Okies in search of stability and work. The Haggards initially settled in Bakersfield, a city that would later become central to the development of the Bakersfield sound in country music, a genre Merle Haggard would come to embody. James Francis Haggard secured a job with the Santa Fe Railroad, which provided some financial security for the family. However, their living conditions were humble. They resided in a small apartment while they sought a more permanent home. The family's situation took an interesting turn when a local woman who owned a boxcar in the nearby town of Oildale approached James with an unusual proposition. She asked if he could convert the boxcar into a livable home. With resourcefulness born out of necessity, James remodeled the boxcar, transforming it into a modest but functional house. This boxcar turned home became the Haggards' residence, and it was there, on April 6, 1937, that Merle Ronald Haggard was born. The boxcar home in Oildale was more than just a shelter. It symbolized the resilience and determination of the Haggard family. James's ingenuity allowed them not only to settle in California, but also to build a life there. Over time, the property was gradually expanded. A bathroom, a second bedroom, a kitchen, and a breakfast nook were added on an adjacent lot, improving the family's living conditions. This piecemeal expansion of their home mirrored the slow but steady progress the Haggards made as they worked toward a better life. The death of Merle Haggard's father in 1946 was a devastating blow for the young boy, leaving an impact that would shape the rest of his life. Haggard was just 9 years old when James Francis Haggard died suddenly of a brain hemorrhage, and the loss deeply affected him. James had been a significant figure in Merle's life, providing stability and a role model in a world filled with economic uncertainty and the challenges of the Dust Bowl era. His death left a void in the family, and forced them into difficult circumstances. Following James Haggard's death, the family's financial situation grew more precarious. To keep the household afloat, Flossie Ma Haggard took a job as a bookkeeper. The role was demanding and time-consuming, and Flossie's absence during the day left young Merle with more freedom than a troubled boy needed. The loss of his father, combined with the pressures of living without close supervision, led Merle down a dark path during his formative years. One of the pivotal moments in Merle Haggard's youth occurred when his older brother Lowell gave him a guitar when Merle was just 12 years old. The guitar became a crucial outlet for the grief and confusion Merle felt after his father's death. Merle was largely self-taught, learning to play by listening to records at home. The music that resonated with him came from country legends like Bob Wills, Lefty Frizzle, and Hank Williams. Their sounds and storytelling deeply influenced the young Haggard and laid the groundwork for his musical style. In the absence of formal training, Haggard's ability to learn on his own demonstrated both his natural talent and his determination. Despite discovering music, Haggard's behavior began to deteriorate rapidly in the aftermath of his father's death. He struggled with authority, school, and discipline. While his mother was out working long hours, Merle started acting out and engaging in delinquent activities that escalated over time. His mother, in a desperate attempt to set him straight, sent him to a juvenile detention center for a weekend. She hoped the experience would scare him into changing his ways. Unfortunately, this brief stint did not have the desired effect. Instead, it seemed to harden him further, reinforcing a rebellious streak that would characterize much of his early life. By the time he was 13, Haggard's criminal behavior had become more serious. He was stealing, forging checks, and drifting toward a life on the fringes of society. Without a stable father figure, and with his mother often busy working, he was drawn into trouble with little guidance or supervision. This period marked the beginning of a series of run-ins with the law that would eventually result in a prison sentence at San Quentin, a chapter that would later become central to his life story and musical legacy. In 1950, at the age of 13, Merle Haggard's struggles with authority and his rebellious streak led him into more serious trouble. Caught shoplifting, Haggard was sent to a juvenile detention center, a continuation of the pattern of delinquency that had started after the death of his father 4 years earlier. This marked the beginning of a series of brushes with the law that would define much of his teenage years and early adulthood. However, even this experience did little to curb his behavior. Haggard's life was increasingly characterized by restlessness and a desire for freedom, which often manifested in running away from home and engaging in criminal activity. The following year, in 1951, Haggard and his friend Bob Teague decided to escape their troubled environment by running away to Texas. Their adventure was emblematic of Haggard's yearning for independence and the open road, themes that would later permeate his music. The two young boys hopped freight trains and hitchhiked across the state, living a transient lifestyle that offered a brief sense of freedom. They were essentially drifters, a lifestyle that would later inspire Haggard's classic songs about life on the move and the struggles of the working class. Eventually, Haggard and Teague returned to California, but their return was marked by trouble. They were accused of a robbery they did not commit and were subsequently jailed. The experience was a harsh reminder of the injustices of life on the margins of society, as they were imprisoned for a crime they had no part in. It was only after the real culprits were caught that the boys were released. Despite the experience, Haggard remained undeterred and unrepentant. The episode did not deter him from his rebellious path, but instead seemed to reinforce his defiance. Later that same year, Haggard found himself back in a juvenile detention center. This time, he and Teague escaped from the facility and headed to Modesto, California. In Modesto, Haggard worked a series of odd jobs to get by, including driving a potato truck, working as a short-order cook, pitching hay, and even working as an oil well shooter, a risky job that involved detonating explosives to increase the flow of oil from wells. These physically demanding and often low-paying jobs exposed Haggard to the hardships of the working class, providing him with the raw material that would later become central to his songwriting. It was also in Modesto that Haggard took his first steps toward a music career. He made his debut performance at a local bar called the Fun Center, alongside his friend Bob Teague. For his performance, Haggard was paid $5 and given free beer. Though it was a modest start, this gig marked the beginning of his journey as a performer. The experience of singing in bars, playing for small crowds, and being paid in cash and drinks became a formative part of his early career. It also offered him a brief escape from the troubles that plagued his life. In 1951, Merle Haggard's life took another dark turn when he returned to Bakersfield after his brief escapades in Texas and Modesto. His return home did not mark a fresh start, but rather a continuation of his troubled behavior. He was once again arrested, this time for truancy and petty larceny. His repeated defiance of authority and involvement in minor crimes had become a pattern, leading to yet another stint in a juvenile detention center. This marked a critical point in his young life, as his behavior began escalating into more severe criminal activities. After escaping from the juvenile detention center, Haggard was caught and sent to the Preston School of Industry, a high-security correctional facility in Ione, California. The Preston School was notorious for its tough environment, designed to rehabilitate young offenders. Haggard's 15-month stay at the institution was marked by a harsh regimen that was meant to break the rebellious spirits of troubled youth. However, his time there did little to deter him from continuing down a criminal path. Upon his release, he soon found himself in trouble once more when he was arrested again after beating a local boy during a burglary attempt. This return to the correctional system reflected how deep Haggard had fallen into a life of delinquency, where the lines between right and wrong had blurred. Despite these continuous run-ins with the law, there was still a glimmer of hope for Haggard's future. Music had always been an important part of his life, even during his most difficult times. That glimmer turned into something more tangible when Haggard and his friend Bob Teague attended a Lefty Frizzle concert. Lefty Frizzle was one of Haggard's musical heroes, a country singer known for his unique voice and heartfelt songs. Haggard's admiration for Frizzle had influenced his style, and attending this concert would prove to be a life-changing event for the young man. While backstage at the concert, Haggard began singing along to the music, catching the attention of Frizzell himself. Frizzell was so impressed by what he heard that he made an unexpected demand. He refused to go on stage unless Haggard was allowed to perform first. This was an extraordinary opportunity for the young Haggard, who had never sung for a large audience before. Nervously, he took the stage and performed for the crowd. The audience responded positively to his performance, offering him a taste of the acclaim and validation that had been missing from his tumultuous life. This experience became a turning point for Haggard. For the first time, he realized that music could be more than just a hobby or a way to escape his troubles. It could be a path to success. So he decided to pursue it as a career. At night, Haggard would perform in local bars and honky-tonks, gradually building a reputation as a talented and charismatic performer. The Bakersfield area, which was becoming a hotbed for a new, grittier style of country music, provided the perfect environment for Haggard to develop his craft. In 1957, Merle Haggard found himself at a crossroads in his life, facing the consequences of years of rebellious behavior and escalating criminal activity. By this time, Haggard was married, but his life was far from stable. Plagued by financial difficulties, he resorted to desperate measures. That year, in a bid to solve his financial woes, Haggard attempted to rob a Bakersfield roadhouse. However, his plan quickly unraveled when he was caught and arrested. This event marked a significant turning point in Haggard's life, setting the stage for the hardships and transformation that would follow. After his conviction for the attempted robbery, Haggard was initially sent to the Bakersfield jail. His incarceration was yet another in a long line of run-ins with the law, but this time, the consequences were much more severe. While at the jail, Haggard's frustration and defiance grew, leading him to attempt an escape. The failed escape attempt only deepened his legal troubles and led to his transfer to one of the most notorious prisons in the country, San Quentin. On February 21, 1958, Haggard arrived at San Quentin Prison, where he was assigned prisoner number A45200. San Quentin, located in Northern California, was infamous for its harsh conditions and housed some of the most dangerous and hardened criminals in the state. For a young man like Haggard, who had already spent much of his youth in various detention centers, the experience was sobering. The reality of being in such a grim environment began to weigh heavily on him, and his time at San Quentin would profoundly impact the rest of his life. Life inside San Quentin was tough. Haggard struggled to adjust to the rigid routine and harsh discipline of prison life. During this period, he faced a series of personal and emotional challenges. One of the most devastating blows came when he learned that his wife, whom he had left behind in Bakersfield, was pregnant with another man's child. The revelation was a significant psychological burden on Haggard, leaving him feeling betrayed and emotionally distraught. The knowledge of his wife's infidelity and the collapse of his marriage compounded the stress of being incarcerated, pushing him into a dark place mentally. While in prison, Haggard was given various jobs, but his instability and defiance led to a series of dismissals. He found it difficult to follow orders and maintain the discipline required to keep a steady job, which only further alienated him from the prison authorities. His inability to hold down these positions within the prison reflected his ongoing struggles with authority and structure, issues that had plagued him throughout his youth. Despite his troubles, Haggard also encountered individuals who would play a crucial role in shaping his future. One of the most significant events during his time at San Quentin involved a fellow inmate known as Rabbit, whose real name was James Kendrick. Rabbit was a notorious criminal with a long history of violent offenses, and he planned an escape from prison. Haggard, feeling desperate and disillusioned, considered joining Rabbit in the escape attempt. However, wiser and more experienced inmates advised him against it, warning him that escaping would likely lead to even harsher punishment and could potentially cost him his life. This counsel marked a turning point for Haggard. The prospect of escaping was tempting, but the warnings from his fellow inmates forced him to reconsider the direction his life was taking. For perhaps the first time, he began to realize that continuing down this path would only lead to more suffering and loss. The decision to stay in prison and serve out his sentence rather than attempt to escape was a crucial moment in Haggard's journey toward personal redemption. Haggard's time at San Quentin was also marked by an event that would leave a lasting impression on him. In 1958, country music legend Johnny Cash performed at the prison. The concert was part of Cash's series of performances at various penitentiaries, which later became famous and were immortalized in albums like At Folsom Prison and San Quentin. For Haggard, watching Cash perform was an eye-opening experience. Seeing a musician who had also struggled with personal demons and brushes with the law, but had managed to turn his life around, inspired Haggard. The concert planted the seed of hope that perhaps he, too, could find redemption through music. By the time Haggard was released on parole in 1960, he was a changed man. Although his time in San Quentin had been difficult and filled with personal turmoil, it also provided him with the clarity and motivation to pursue a different path. He was determined to leave behind the life of crime that had defined his youth and to focus on his passion for music. The years that followed saw Haggard channeling his experiences into his songwriting, crafting songs that resonated with themes of hardship, loss, and redemption. Music career. After his release from San Quentin in 1960, Merle Haggard took a job digging ditches for his brother's electrical company. Despite the rough start, Haggard soon returned to music and began recording with Tally Records, a small label in Bakersfield, California. His early recordings, including Singing My Heart Out and Skid Row, didn't gain much attention. However, in 1962, he got his first break when he performed at a Wynn Stewart show in Las Vegas and heard Stewart's song Sing a Sad Song. Haggard recorded it, and it became a minor hit. In 1963, Haggard's recording of Liz Anderson's My Friends Are Gonna Be Strangers became his first national top 10 record. This success launched his career and led to a contract with Capitol Records. In 1967, he recorded I'm a Lonesome Fugitive, also written by Liz and her husband, Casey Anderson, which became his first #1 hit. The song's themes of regret and running from the law resonated with Haggard's personal history and marked the start of his rise as one of country music's most iconic artists. The 1967 album Branded Man began a successful era for Merle Haggard. By the late 60s, he produced several #1 hits like Mama Tried and Sing Me Back Home. His 1970 LP, a tribute to the best damn fiddle player in the world, revived Western swing and expanded his audience. With Capitol Records, he amassed 24 #1 singles by 1966. Between 1981 and 1985, Haggard achieved 12 more top 10 hits, including My Favorite Memory and Natural High. Haggard faced financial struggles into the 90s as his chart presence declined with the rise of artists like George Strait and Randy Travis. His last #1 hit was Twinkle, Twinkle Lucky Star from Chill Factor in 1988. In 2000, he signed with Anti Records and released If I Could Only Fly to critical acclaim, followed by Roots, Volume 1 in 2001. In 2005, he released Chicago Wind, featuring the anti-Iraq war song America First, reflecting on America's challenges and honoring its soldiers. Merle Haggard's personal life was as eventful as his music career, marked by multiple marriages and a large family. Personal life. He was married 5 times, with each relationship bringing its own set of stories and challenges. His first marriage was to Leona Hobbs in 1956, and they had 4 children: Dana, Marty, Kelly, and Noel. However, the marriage was tumultuous, and they divorced in 1964. Just a year later, Haggard married singer Bonnie Owens, the ex-wife of fellow country star Buck Owens. Bonnie played a significant role in Haggard's early career, helping him find his footing in the country music industry. She co-wrote Today I Started Loving You Again with Haggard, a song inspired by a sudden resurgence of affection he felt for her while on tour. Despite their divorce in 1978, they remained close, and Bonnie continued to sing backup for him until she died in 2006. She even acted as the maid of honor at Haggard's 3rd wedding, underscoring their enduring bond. In 1978, shortly after his divorce from Bonnie, Haggard married Leona Williams, a fellow country singer. However, this marriage also ended in divorce in 1983. 2 years later, Haggard married Debbie Parrott, but their relationship was short-lived as well. with the couple divorcing in 1991. Finally, in 1993, Haggard found lasting companionship with his fifth wife, Theresa Ann Lane. They had 2 children together, Janessa and Ben. This marriage endured until Haggard's death, and by all accounts it was a stable and happy union, providing Haggard with a sense of peace in his later years. Throughout his life, Haggard's relationships and marriages were often complicated, but they also inspired many of his songs. His experiences with love, loss, and family deeply influenced his music, making his personal life an integral part of his artistic identity. Merle Haggard's musical influence continues to resonate even after his death. Death and legacy. In his later years, Merle Haggard grappled with numerous health challenges, facing them with resilience and unwavering spirit. His perseverance reflected the same grit that defined his legendary country music career. In 1995, he underwent angioplasty to treat clogged arteries, a sign that he was fighting battles quietly while continuing to create music for his fans. A more serious crisis came in November 2008, when he was diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer. Doctors removed part of his right lung in a life-saving procedure. Most would need a long recovery, but Merle was back on stage just 2 months later, performing at Buck Owens' Crystal Palace. This quick return showcased his deep love for music and commitment to his audience. Despite ongoing health setbacks, Haggard kept recording, performing, and touring well into his 70s. He wasn't just coasting on past glory, he was actively producing and connecting with fans, his aged voice carrying the same authenticity that had always defined it. In December 2015, Haggard was hospitalized with pneumonia, prompting concern among fans. Though he showed signs of recovery, his health declined again in early 2016, leading to tour cancellations. Diagnosed with double pneumonia, a severe condition, especially for someone his age, Haggard struggled to return to the stage. On April 6, 2016, his 79th birthday, he passed away at his home in Palo Cedro, California. The loss marked the end of a monumental career and the passing of a cultural icon. After his death, his wife, Theresa Ann Lane, spoke openly about her grief. Together for over 23 years, their bond was more than romantic. It was a partnership grounded in love, trust, and shared experiences. She described Merle as her world, her anchor, and the center of her life. Theresa's emotional reflections offered a deeply personal perspective on the man behind the music. Losing Merle meant losing her best friend, confidant, and partner in every way. Her words conveyed the void his absence created, a silence that was both emotional and physical. Lane had been far more than a supportive spouse. During Haggard's later years, she was integral to his career, helping manage his tours, supporting his creative work, and standing by him during repeated hospital visits. Through cancer, pneumonia, and countless health scares, she remained his steady source of encouragement. Even when his body grew frail, her presence lifted his spirits. In interviews, she often shared her pride in his unshakable dedication to music and to the fans he loved so dearly. Haggard's passing hit Theresa hard. She spoke of how it felt like her entire world had vanished. Her grief reminded everyone that behind the image of a country music legend was a deeply personal story of love, loss, and partnership. Their life together was filled with joy, but also the trials of supporting a man who lived in the spotlight yet yearned for privacy and peace. In the months and years after his death, Theresa and their children had to adjust to a new reality. Merle had been the emotional center of their family. To fans, he was the outlaw poet who gave voice to working-class struggles. To his family, he was dad, husband, and friend. A man with warmth, humor, and wisdom. Theresa, in particular, bore the greatest emotional burden. Life without Merle meant facing the echoes of a shared life, now turned quiet. Still, she found purpose in honoring his memory, speaking with fans, sharing stories, and preserving his legacy. Her love for Merle remained as strong as ever, echoed in the memories and music they had built together. Despite all his medical setbacks, Haggard's influence never dimmed. His death marked the end of an era, but his music continues to inspire. Renowned for fusing the electrified Bakersfield sound with raw, emotionally honest lyrics, he reshaped the direction of country music. His songs tackled hardship, resilience, and redemption, timeless themes that still resonate. Classics like Okie from Muskogee, Mama Tried, and Sing Me Back Home are more than hits. They're cultural landmarks. Haggard's music gave voice to those who felt misunderstood or marginalized, offering a blend of truth and tenderness that cut through superficiality. His words painted vivid pictures of life's struggles and triumphs, delivered with unflinching honesty. Beyond his own catalog, Haggard's legacy lives on through the artists he inspired. Legends like George Jones, Johnny Cash, and Willie Nelson counted him as both a peer and an influence. Today's country stars often cite him as a foundational figure, striving to emulate his authenticity and storytelling. Tributes, documentaries, and cover versions keep his legacy alive. His work continues to be analyzed, celebrated, and shared, cementing his status as one of the genre's most influential figures. Over the course of his career, Haggard received countless accolades that recognized his exceptional contributions to music. He was honored by some of the most prestigious institutions, including the Academy of Country Music, the Country Music Association, and the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. His songwriting talent was formally acknowledged in 1977 with his induction into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. That was followed by his induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum in 1994, a milestone that underscored his enduring importance to the genre. 3 years later, he was inducted into the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame, further honoring his wide-reaching influence. In 2006, Haggard received 2 of his most significant honors. He was awarded a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, recognizing the breadth and depth of his influence across decades. That same year, BMI named him a BMI Icon at its 54th Annual Pop Awards, highlighting his impact across multiple genres. BMI continued to honor Haggard with a long list of awards, including 48 BMI Country Awards, 9 BMI Pop Awards, and even a BMI R&B Award. His songs achieved remarkable radio success, earning 16 BMI Million Air Awards, given to compositions played over 1 million times. With over 25 million total performances, Haggard's music has touched generations and will continue to do so. Merle Haggard's story is one of triumph, struggle, love, and artistry. He was a man of the people, grounded, gifted, and genuine. His songs captured the American experience in a way few others could. His legacy endures not just in the music he made, but in the lives he touched, the hearts he healed, and the soul he gave to country music. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.